Break with Reality, Part 21. Dougal regained consciousness briefly as Kirsten and Laurie pulled him down from the top of the tiny wheelhouse. "Fucking hell, look at that," said Keir, who was piloting the boat as they rounded the stern of the ship they just escaped from. They all looked to where he was pointing. Through half-closed eyes, Dougal could see two figures standing at the railing at the back of the boat. "Is that?" started Laurie. "Gavin," confirmed Kirsten. "Who's he?" again Laurie. "It's Rocco," said Keir. The chief engineer was standing with his arm around the shoulders of the white shell-suited Schemie, and both were grinning, waving back at the crew of the escape vessel. Just then there was an incredibly loud metal screeching and roaring sound, and a massive plume of grey smoke appeared at the exhaust funnel of the standby vessel, followed by an ear-splitting explosion. Then total silence, as if the ship had just taken its final rattling breath. Rocco turned and looked at the smoking red chimney, shook his head, and then turned to start trudging wearily, followed by Gavin, back to the accommodation part. Both men disappeared inside. Dougal was vaguely aware of being shaken gently back to life when he awoke from a deep slumber. The first thing that came into view was the welcome vision of Kirsten's face above him, looking directly into his eyes. Unsure at first as to where exactly they were, this was quickly rectified in recognition of the hot, pungent smell of diesel assaulting his nostrils. The rattling vibration of the engine and the bobbing motion of the rescue boat confirmed to him that it hadn't all been a wild dream. He lifted his head up slowly and looked around the tiny accommodation space. Sitting in the seat opposite him, Keir was dozing, chin in his chest. Up front, steering the boat, was Laurie. The wind had dropped, the rain had finally stopped, and the darkness brought by the night and storm clouds had all but gone. "You've been out for a while," Kirsten said, her tone soothing through the din of the engine. "Aye," Dougal could hear his own croaking voice. "Must have nodded off here for a while. You were out for the count. Looks like you needed it." "How long?" "A couple of hours or so." "You know, I'm not entirely convinced," Kirsten said, looking over to where Laurie was sitting at the tiller, "that we know exactly which direction we should be sailing, to be honest." She smiled and shook her head, turning back to Dougal. "How's your leg?" He reached down and pulled up a trouser leg. His calf was bruised and there was a slit where the machete had gone through. Luckily, the cut was near the edge of the muscle, and the bleeding, although it was covered in blood, had all but stopped. "I'll survive," Dougal replied. "Shoulder still a bit sore though. I think I might have broken some ribs." "I found this." Kirsten lifted a canvas bag from beside her feet onto her lap, stuck her hand in and produced a pack of sticking plasters. She selected an appropriate size one, pulled the tabs of the sticky part and applied it to Dougal's injured leg. "There, good as new." She leaned forward and kissed him on the forehead. "Thanks, nurse," Dougal said. "Do I suppose you do bed baths, do you?" Kirsten started a laugh. "Fuck you. Looks like there's no damage done to your libido then." She pushed him on the shoulder, thankfully for Dougal the undamaged one. "Your turn to take the helm," she announced. Dougal got up, felt extremely dizzy, and sat down again to regain his balance. "Laurie!" cried Kirsten to the dishevelled lady of the night. There were still remnants of black eyeliner giving her a tired, haunted look, even though she was smiling. "Dougal's up now. You can have a break for your navel gazing duties." "Oh aye, thank fuck," said Laurie. She turned, yawned, and beckoned Dougal forward. "You know how to work this?" Not really sure. You'd better show me. How do you read the compass?" "No idea. But you can see Aberdeen for here now. Anyway, look." She pointed at the horizon. Dougal scanned the view. She was right. It seemed strange to him seeing all those familiar places from a totally unfamiliar perspective. "Oh, aye, okay. How long have we been sailing in?" Dougal asked. "Couple of hours, I think. Took us a while to get our bearings in that fucking storm. This wee tub is hoorin' slow. Probably still take another hour or so to get in." Laurie left Dougal to figure out what he was doing, and retired to the bench where Keir sat, snuggling into him as much as she was able to, then closing her eyes to snooze. Slow progress it was, but progress nonetheless, and within the hour they were in striking distance of the harbour entrance. Dougal passed the steering duties to Kirsten. Everybody had had a nap, although no one was fully recuperated. "Dinna steer for the harbour," said Keir, suddenly awake and stretching, startling the others. "Head for Nig Bay instead." "Why on earth do we want to go there?" protested Laurie, yawning. "It'll leave us miles to walk." "Because we dinna ken who's at the harbour side waiting for us, do we?" Dougal explained, or mansplained. "Ah, right enough," said Laurie. "Probably swarming by now, eh?" 15 minutes or so later, they were metres away from the beach. "Right, turn her around and reverse in," Keir instructed Dougal, who was at the wheel again. "Just go in really slow." The amateur sailor frowned in puzzlement, but did as he was asked. Once going backwards, he slowed the boat down to a crawl until it gently hit the sand. "Right, everybody jump," Commander Keir called. He turned to Dougal. "Except you and me," he said, pointing his thumb and finger and thumb between his own and Dougal's chest a few times. "Why, what are we doing?" Dougal asked. "Taking care of the good ship Tango here," Keir said, tapping the side of the boat. He bent down, went into a locker and took out a fireman's axe. "Ha! Found this earlier." It had a decent blade on one side and a sharp pick in the other. He grabbed a length of rope that had been lying on one of the benches and tossed it over to Dougal. "Tie the steering so it's going straight, and then stand by the controls, midshipman." "Aye, aye, Captain," Dougal saluted back at him. Keir knelt down in the hull of the wee boat and started hacking a hole. It dawned on Dougal then what the plan was. He went to the steering, tied it up and waited for the signal. "That's it! Right, full throttle ahead," Keir shouted, getting up quickly, a small spouting trickle of water appearing from the piece of hull he'd been hacking at. Dougal shoved the control as far forward as it could go, and they both clambered up, leaping off the back of the boat, landing in the shallow water lapping onto the beach. "Here, look, a keepsake," said Keir. Dougal broke his gaze from the rapidly departing boat to see what he was talking about. In Keir's offered hand was LaRue's machete, partially rusted blade still gleaming in the early sunlight. "Thanks," said Dougal. He took the weapon, swung his arm in an arc, and launched the machete out as far into the sea as he was capable of. Both men watched the blade make a small splash. Dougal imagined it sinking, probably slicing some poor innocent fish on its way to a final resting place. They traipsed further up the shore, joining the other half of the motley crew where they all stood and watched the boat returning to sea. Slowly the small vessel's waterline started rising while the speed started decreasing. Thick black smoke appeared from the exhaust pipe on top. Another few minutes and the puff of black smoke was all that remained of the trusty daughter craft. Keir, Laurie, Kirsten and Dougal continued staring at the spot where their literal lifeboat had now disappeared. "We need a plan," Dougal said. "We need a shower," Kirsten and Laurie simultaneously, turning and giggling at each other, pulling pinkies. "We need a fucking drink," said Keir, still staring at the patch of empty water where the boat used to be. The rest looked at him for a few seconds before they all turned and headed to the top of the beach. "So, anybody got time?" Dougal asked. No one answered. He carried on. "No one seems to wear a watch these days, probably because everybody has got the time on their phone." "This is the longest I've gone without a phone for ages," Kirsten said. "Beginning to wonder what's happening on Facebook." "Ha, I can see your status update right now," Dougal made a typing on a computer mime with his fingers. "Just being chased by 2 machete and meat-cleaving wielding murderers and blown up a supply boat. Smiley face." Everybody murmured a laugh at that. "Like," added Kirsten to more hilarity, miming the pretend click of a mouse. They walked up onto the winding road that would take him into Torry. Keir, walking arm in arm with Laurie, looked across at a limping Dougal, being helped along by Kirsten. "Camerons?" he suggested. Camerons," Dougal replied, laughing. could murder a pint. The end.